Hey, what's up, y'all? Today we got a gentleman outside dressing corn. Notice that the biggest plants are flopping over and laying in a row. This field was no-tilled on May 8th. Got a pound and 3.5 inches rain on it on May 18th, and not much ever since. It's been hot and dry. Here's a pretty good looking field of corn. It's right in there about V6, growing fast. It's getting a little spiky, little drought stress. So as I'm walking across this field, a few things are jumping out. We certainly got some lodged plants. I got one there, seedling black dot. We got nice big healthy plants. We've got smaller plants. The smaller plants look like they're about V4, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 leaf stages behind, so they came up a little slower. So we got a little uneven emergence. We got a few stragglers, but the big concern are the big plants, big healthy looking plants leaning over. So we're gonna have to do a little digging. I think the problem lies beneath the soil line. Hey there, buddy. You okay? Are you gonna be okay? That's not good. Oh, there's another one. And one more way down there. Nice big green healthy plant flopped over. This guy here, he's leaning hard. Here's another one leaning. He's flat. This one's leaning. There's another flat one up there. So we've got the problem. Let's try to figure out what it is. So here we got a nice big healthy plant. These here are a little smaller, come up a little later. We can still see our fertilized trench, and it's a good 3 inches away from the plant, so I'm not expecting salting damage, root damage from the fertilize. On this big plant, the first thing I noticed right here is these nodal roots are all desiccated and clubbed off on the end. So that's a big clue what's going on here. We'll dig her up and wash her off and see what else we can find out. So I think what is happening here is a combination of heat and drought stress, and it's been bright, sunny, very little cloud cover, temperatures in the 80s for most of that time. Now dry soil heats up faster than wet soil, so we can observe soil temperatures in the 90s, even as the ambient temperature is only in the 80s. And that has caused desiccation of the root system within the top 3/4 inches of the soil. So on this plant here, we've got the seed, the mesocotyl. These are seminal roots down here at the bottom, and we can see that we had a planting depth of 2 inches, which is where it ought to be. But this plant was unable to get these nodal roots established and out of this top, deeper than this top inch of soil, and it just kept burning up and desiccating back to the growth point. It did get a couple of these nodal roots out, but that was not enough to hold the plant upright when the wind starts blowing, and certainly not enough to sustain the growth of a plant this big. Now, if Mother Nature had cooperated, give us some cloud cover and a rain, and cool off this top inch of soil, we'd be able to get some nodal roots down through it and established. But as long as it stays hot and dry, it's not going to make it. And eventually what will happen, you'll see right here, is that mesocotyl will crack, and when that happens, without the nodal roots to sustain the plant, it's game over, and this plant fell over when that broke right there. So here's a good illustration of the heat damage. This plant, another big plant growing very fast. We've got mesocotyl seed coat, 2 inch planting depth. and it was able to get nodal roots established and down into the deeper, cooler, moisture soil. But as you can see, anything in this top half inch is desiccated and gone. So this is the top half inch of soil that got super dry and hot and just got to a lethal level for the nodal root system. So anything from here to the growth point desiccated and got clubbed off. So without some cooler, drier weather, we got some new ones starting to emerge and come down, but they won't make it through this top half inch of soil until we get some cloud cover, some cooler weather, and some rain. And so this plant was doing what it was supposed to do, was putting down nodal roots, trying to sustain itself, but just didn't have enough structure in this top half inch of soil to hold a plant up that big, blowing in the wind. And so when you're missing your root system from here to here, it's going to flop over. So here's one of the big healthy plants out of the field. He was standing up without any trouble. And we've got our seed coat right here, and the mesocotyl up to the growth point. And check out the development of these nodal roots. I mean, they're going down, they're thick, plenty of plumbing underneath this plant to give it moisture and stability and to keep it standing up. And we've got, nodal roots attached all the way. As you can see, we got some nodal roots here that went out horizontally right underneath the soil surface, and they're starting to die back and get burned off. And here's a big one here that was running along the soil surface. He's not got much life in him and burn off, but those nodal roots that went down got more than an inch deep in the soil line. These are reaching out, grabbing fertilizer, grabbing moisture, and really doing a good job growing this plant. The seed, the mesocotyl, still intact and healthy, and a nice big stable plant. Okay, so this case of floppy corn was a bit of a mystery, took a little while to figure out, and I'll try to illustrate all the moving pieces here the best I can. As a reminder, we had a planting date of May the 8th. The last rain event was May the 18th, and the time of the field call was June 18th. And in the meantime, this 30-day stretch here was 85-degree temperatures and absolutely no rain and breeze. So very hot and breezy. Typically, when we have floppy corn, the problem is a shallow planting. And we get a soil line about right here, and then we see the death of these nodal roots as they come out. And eventually the plant grows fast enough and big enough that the mesocotyl can't support the weight, and it breaks off right here, and the corn flops over. Now, in this case, we did not have really shallow planted corn. We consistently found corn that was planted at 2 inches deep, which is kind of a mystery of why these nodal roots here were dying off. One thing that we observed, again, it was very dry. There was no moisture in this top inch of soil. But we did find various levels of compaction, depending on the soil type and topography of the farm. And we had both sidewall compaction here from the planer, and we also had some older compaction about 1.5 inches deep that was from vertical till in years past. Now, as we had this 30-day stretch of hot, dry weather with air temperatures in the 80s, soil temperatures reaching 90s, anywhere we had compaction, this clay soil would shrink and the soil aggregates would fracture along these compaction lines and just shrink and draw back and fracture. And what that essentially would do is create air pockets where we are trying to develop roots. Roots can't grow in the air, roots have to grow in the soil, and we've got a pounding sun, no rain in sight, and right in this zone where we're trying to shoot out nodal roots, we have fracturing and opening and creating air pockets that are lethal to this nodal root development. So as this plant continues to shoot out nodal roots into this hot, dry soil and hitting these air pockets, the growth point that is located on the tips of these nodal roots right here would die and terminate. And the conditions were just too harsh for these nodal roots to make it through this lethal zone and down in the cooler, moisture soil. And if this plant's going to continue to keep putting out nodal roots until weather conditions change some, that it can make it down in the cooler, moisture soil and get established. But in the meantime, under these harsh conditions, the roots continue to die off and stump off short. And then as the wind blows and works this plant back and forth, eventually, without these nodal roots supporting the rapid growth of the plant and stabilizing the plant and the wind, it will break the mesocotyl off right there, and the corn plant will fall over, and that's game over. So unfortunately, there's not a lot to do except pray for rain that will close up the fractures in the soil profile along the compaction, that will cool off this top inch of soil, and that will eventually allow nodal roots to make it down out of the first inch and a half of soil down in the cooler, moisture soil and begin feeding these plants. A little frustrating. Not much you can do except sit and watch the skies at this point, but hopefully the majority of the plants are still looking good, and they'll be enough to finish off strong and bring a yield at the end. So that's what we got into today.